time constraints today?
I don't know.
Okay, usually this will just take about an hour.
Okay.
I've never had this problem before.
That's okay. I think my camera, like, stops recording every 10 minutes. And so I think I just, like, need to keep, I'm like, oh, I think it just stopped. And so I looked and then so I'll have to do that quite a bit, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah, whatever you need to do. And then do you feel like you need a break or do you want to stop at any point?
Okay, no problem.
Okay, I think it's working now. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready, yeah.
Okay, cool. Can you just start off by telling me a little bit about kind of the overview of how you got Lyme, when it started, what symptoms you experienced, physical or psychological, and if you kind of knew about Lyme and just like how you ended up in kind of the Lyme world.
Sure. I had to piece it all together, but back in January of 2009, I was in Bellingham, Washington, and I got bit by a single tick. At the time, I did not realize it, but I took a shower and I had this little black dot on my stomach, and I just kind of like was like, "What's that?" And I wiped it off. And then I actually ended up getting a bullseye rash, but I was totally uneducated on Lyme disease. And so I showed it to some people, and they're like, oh, that looks like a big ringworm, and I just kind of blew it off. And then I ended up getting like this really bad flu, and that was probably at least 2, 3, maybe even 5 to 6 months after that tick bite. It just like knocked me on my ass, and I couldn't get out of bed. Super, super, super sick. I remember, not being able to eat. I woke up with like this massive migraine. I never had a migraine before. And I almost went to the emergency room then because I thought I was having an aneurysm. But I ended up just kind of like getting over that flu and being like, wow, what happened to me? I've never been that sick in my life. And then from that point on, my first 3 symptoms were chronic fatigue. I went from being really active and awake to always wanting to sleep. So chronic fatigue, muscle pain. I worked at a gym. I was a personal trainer, and I was always working out and always active, and I never had pain, and I just kept associating it with like the fact that maybe I was working out too hard, or
Yeah.
and then I also had stomach pain, so my food intolerances began, and so I basically just became intolerant. Yeah, I became intolerant to dairy, and I just like every time I ate, my stomach would hurt. And those 3 symptoms lasted about like those were probably the main ones for probably 2 years or so. And I cut out dairy, and I thought that would solve my problem, and I cut all these foods out. But then my symptoms got progressively worse. So then I started to have I started to have more arthritis-like symptoms, vertigo symptoms, anxiety, trouble sleeping. I could never fall asleep at night, and I was in school again, and I was unable to study and focus. I was always in a ton of pain, muscularly, just sitting. My neck always hurt. I was continuing to work out and do things, but I was, kind of hiding it from the rest of the world. I would go home and sleep, and I was living with my then boyfriend, and I would pretend like I was like out doing stuff all day, but really I was napping. And then things got really bad for me in the summer of 2014. That was kind of my wall, and my cognitive problems got really bad. I couldn't speak clearly. I was slurring my speech. I couldn't remember how I got to grocery stores. I would walk out of the store and be like, "Oh my gosh, where's my car? Did I drive here? Did I bike here? Did I walk here? What? How am I here?" It started to get kind of scary. I would be at work and I would be, um, in mid conversation with a potential, you know, client, and I would forget what I was talking about, and I
Wow.
started to have eye problems. I started to randomly, lose vision in one eye. I couldn't ride my
Wow.
bike. I couldn't ride my bike anymore because I was having so many allergy issues. I became allergic to like all types of foods. I was breaking out in rashes every single day. I would change my diet. Like I gave up gluten and I thought that would solve everything. My hair was falling out. I had thyroid problems. I had melasma all over my face. I I was a wreck. And I think the final straw for me was when I was just sitting on the couch. Or, well, there's a few final straws, I think. But I was sitting on the couch and I went to get up and just like my legs just like gave out from underneath me. And that next day I went to the doctor. And I had.
So before then, did you go see anyone with, because you have been sick for like 5 years, like, or at least not super well for 5 years.
Yeah. So I was never a person that went to doctors, and so I started to. Oh, my joint started swelling in my hand really bad. It swelled up to the size of a golf ball. And I went to the doctor when I started having like physical symptoms like that. I knew something was wrong with me the whole time. I was like, okay, I went from being healthy to not healthy. Like, what is the problem here? And so I went to naturopathic doctors and I had them do food allergy testing. I had one in Bellingham where I would go to her and I'd be like, test me for this, test me for this, test me for I must have worms, like, test me for this. And we'd send off all my lab tests and everything would come back. I'd cut out the foods I was intolerant to. I'd cut out gluten, I'd do that kind of stuff, but I wasn't getting any answers, and I was searching constantly for answers. And finally, when things got to the point where, it was scary with my hands and my joints, I went to the doctor. And, I was going to the dermatologist for my melasma on my face, and like, no one had really like checked my thyroid or anything yet. But I would, I would have conversations with the doctors, and I was the type of person that I would not believe that of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. I was just like, no, I don't have that. I don't have that. I was like, what is that? That's a symptom. What is it? So I was really feisty, and I refused to go to them because that's the kind of stuff they were telling me. But I did go to a rheumatoid doctor when my knuckle swelled, and she was like, she tested me, and she told me I was, like, kind of, I may or may not have rheumatoid arthritis, and I was like, well, what does that mean? And so at that point, I had already had Lyme in my scope, and so I was researching, and I told her, I was like, well, I'm getting tested for Lyme disease, and when it comes back positive, I'll come and let you know. And she was like, yeah, right, blah, blah, blah. But, well, I'll get back to her. But I went to the doctor so that after I fell off the couch, I had already kind of pieced it all together in my mind that I had Lyme disease. I was doing research, and I walked into the doctor's office, and I was like, I had never seen this doctor before, and he walks in the door and he goes, what's a healthy girl like you doing here? And I was like, at my sickest point, but we still look fairly, we look fairly healthy. And so I just was like, I'm not healthy. I'm like, I have chronic Lyme. I got bit by a tick in 2008.